Greetings fanboys and fangirls, Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. Today we're going to be having a look at the playset for the Jurassic World Dominion line from Mattel. This is the Outpost Chaos playset, and I've always been fascinated when companies tend to release these large playsets because they're so rare nowadays. It seems like for every big toy push, there's still plenty of vehicles and action figure scale, but playsets seem to be scaled back a little bit these days. So every time there's a big release like this, I'm always fascinated to check it out. Although the critical response to the movie has been nothing short of brutal, it does seem that people have absolutely loved Jurassic World Dominion, including me, so I was very excited to go ahead and jump on the bandwagon for this particular line of toys. So as we look at this playset today, we're going to be comparing it to all sorts of different figures from the line and also talking about the line in general. But before we begin, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, as I do all sorts of great toy line reviews, different playsets, lots of Masters of the Universe stuff, and just all sorts of toy coverage here on Fanboys Forever. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the like button, because it really does help the channel out and it really helps us grow. So thank you so much. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the packaging. As we can see, there's kind of a mix of artwork as well as figure photography on the box. Pretty much anything on the box that doesn't actually come in the set is some kind of artwork, like the Giganotosaurus in the background there, and it's a really cool digital painting. However, other things like the slight redeco of the Pyroraptor are actual photography, or at least some kind of render that's placed in the art. We get the beautiful logo from the film, as well as some information on some of the action features. And of course, the all-important shot of an incredibly happy, almost CGI-looking child who is thrilled with this 4-foot wide playset. And a neat touch up in the top corner, they actually do feature the two exclusive figures with the Mercenary as well as the Pyroraptor. And of course, if it helps you find this playset, here is the barcode, as well as the one on bottom. The sides of the box should be fairly familiar to anyone who's collected this line, as it features that cool render of the Pyroraptor. And on the back, we get a tremendous amount of explanation about all the different action features and what actually comes in the box. Adult assembly is required. And finally, on the other side of the box, it even shows all the different ways that you can build out the playset. So let's go ahead and crack it open. Alright, and with that we are all set up, and overall it was actually a pretty easy build experience. The only thing that took any sort of time or was frustrating at all was just to place a few kind of rectangular stickers. It wasn't anything too major. Thankfully the slots in the plastic for the stickers fit, and it was honestly a very simple assembly. So much so that I think most kids would be able to actually put this thing together if you're looking at an 8 or 9-year-old. However, one thing is painfully obvious by the size of the 4-inch figure down here. This thing is way too big for me to try and review like this. It's just going to be an absolute pain no matter what I do. I wasn't really sure what I would be dealing with in terms of size here, but it is obvious that we'll have to do something a little different than usual. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and get this thing repositioned. See you in a second. And here we have it, the Outpost Chaos playset, fully assembled in all of its glory. Over 4 feet long, and this thing truly is huge. I was kind of wondering how that could be with the size of the box only being about a foot wide, but since everything is packed in its own separate sections, it really does make a pretty big difference when you actually start joining this thing. And you can see that, just like you saw in the little build portion a minute ago, everything is kind of assembled in 4 main parts. You have the gate over here, you have the outpost tower here, you have like the little research kind of observation area here, and then you have the raptor pin here. So there's 3 of these like little pins that are kind of used as connectors. You have this one over here, and then you have this one. And in that way, you can articulate the thing. You're able to take those sections and kind of fold them almost like they're fence portions. But I definitely wanted to show you it just like this, to where you could see every bit of the playset without any kind of additional things or decoration that I was adding to it or anything to spruce it up. So you could see exactly what you get. And just as I was saying earlier, just know that you can kind of like flex those fence portions inward and kind of almost make it like half of a giant pin. This way, it's kind of like there's an invisible, like imagined area right here where there would be more of the pin, but this is like your inside look at it. I think that's a pretty neat way to do it. And something that I'm going to keep referencing as I go through is if this thing ever goes on like deep clearance, it would be really fun for me to just buy another one and then just join it through here and have this huge, like gigantic pin for all my dinosaurs. It would be something that would be really hard for me to resist. And aside from the addition of a little bit of fake shrubbery in the background just to spruce things up a little bit, we do have our very first official configuration for the playset. This is just one way that you can arrange it. For this particular variation, you have the gate here, the outpost tower, then the raptor pen, and then over here you kind of have the little lookout research observation area. You can actually take these guns off and they're completely modular. And then you just have this kind of little floating piece that you can plug into the top of any one of those others, but this is just the configuration that is shown. Definitely one of the advantages that I think this configuration has is this gives you the most play area. And so especially since you're able to take these and kind of flex them in, I guess the best word I would use for this is it's just extremely versatile, and that's a really good thing when you're dealing with a playset, because it's good to be able to kind of shrink it down if you need to, or open it up if you have a larger area, or kind of tuck it away to the side. Like if you wanted to, even in this mode, you could bring it in to be really, really closed, and that's good because it still gives you just enough of a window to the inside to do different kinds of play. Either way, it's great to have those kinds of options. We're going to unbox one of the little packs of figures. Here we have the Owen and Velociraptor Beta set, and we're going to be getting him out for this particular configuration. It's funny, but having these guys out of the package, it's something that used to be completely unremarkable, but now it's kind of a crazy sight to see an action figure aimed towards kids that actually has a real pew-pew with it right here. And that's something that we don't see that often anymore. So that's accurate to the film, and I'm glad to see it. There's not any paint detail or anything, but it's there. I also like what they did with Owen in terms of the likeness. Paint isn't perfect or anything, especially on the eyes there. It's not exactly straight. But I really do think the likeness is a good extension of what they did with the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom figures, and I think it's a little bit better quality while still maintaining that same scale. Beta is a really interesting new addition, and I'm really liking the paint and everything that they did for this particular figure. I think that she looks great, especially because she has a hinge right there at her neck that's extremely effective in terms of getting those cool poses, and even hinges on her little raptor arms. Of course, there's only a rotation there at the legs, but of course, if you want to, you can raise this up and you can get the little code for the app. So that's cool that you can scan it and collect. There is a rotation at the tail, so that's something. And just for giggles, they included this little fox, so I guess Beta can find her next meal that way. Now that we have Owen in here, it's a little easier to kind of get a better idea of the scale of the set. Our first section is the actual gate of the park. And you can see there's a little bit of some sticker applications right here. And then we have the Jurassic Park logo, or Jurassic World logo, whatever you want to say, which is kind of funny because I really do think that this outpost is supposed to be Biosyn at the end of the movie, which is kind of like their nature reserve. I honestly think that was a really creative way of getting a Jurassic Park type of scenario into a movie that wouldn't have that. So kudos to them for their creativity in that regard. You can just open it up, and I do like how at least the logo kind of overlaps, like so. Almost like a little bit of a semi-locking mechanism right there. And this is also a good point for me to bring out, say, the Jurassic Park Jeep from the set that had Tim and the Tyrannosaurus with it, and to see if it can go up there. And sure enough, that ramp is designed very well to where you can easily bring a vehicle in or out. And so I think it looks really good. And they were very mindful of the size there, so I think that's great. This is also probably as good a time as any to look at the turret platform. You can see that they have these little foot pegs on each of them. The figures in this line do have holes for the foot pegs, and even though it's kind of small for one of these figures, it does work just fine. No one ends up looking pretty good manning the thing. And of course, if you hit the button, we have a very forceful missile launch. So that's always a good thing when they don't play around like that. Like I said, this particular mode is very versatile, and it's a great way to just have plenty of room to play and display with your figures. But stick around, because I'm going to show you the other modes and show you the other features of the set while opening some other figures to go with it. When I first found out about this playset, I have to admit that this was probably the transformation or the mode that I think was the most surprising to me, especially because what we're seeing, and I really have to kind of give you an aerial shot for you to understand exactly, a three-way configuration of the different parts. You can see that now we have one section here, and one here, and with the tower in the middle kind of acting as a central hub. And this really strikes me as kind of a novel concept for a playset. I really love it because it allows you to kind of section off three distinct areas, whether you're putting different dinosaurs in that area, like a herbivore cage. One is maybe for the carnosaurs, something like that. It's just interesting. Like, the possibilities for this particular configuration are really cool, and it was really unexpected. And to get a better feel for this one, we're going to be bringing in the greatest Mandalorian director of them all, Bryce Dallas Howard as Claire, and a Dilophosaurus. So let's go ahead and get her unboxed. I think most collectors of the Jurassic toys would agree that poor Claire here probably got one of the worst deals of all for the Fallen Kingdom toys. It was a figure that was perfectly serviceable when they did the two different versions of Claire, one that came with the gyrosphere and is still available actually at Target with the gyrosphere. It wasn't a very attractive figure. The face looked so bizarre, and even though this still doesn't really look a whole lot like Bryce Dallas Howard, it's much better than what they did the first time around. I don't know when we're going to get that likeness just right, but I still think it's a whole lot better. It's a fairly big improvement, and I really like her accessory with a little gun here. And then I like that the walkie-talkie even has like a little sticker on it, so you can see that there's, some actual kind of graphics going there. Plus, the costume is fairly accurate to the movie, which is much more than you could say for the original first release in Fallen Kingdom. The Dilophosaurus has always been my favorite dinosaur from the original Jurassic Park. Ever since I was a kid and saw the movie, it just really stuck with me. So I was so great to see this, and the Dilophosaurus is one that also kind of received some poor treatment in that original toy line and in the subsequent sequel lines from that. And finally, I believe that they've at least gotten the deco right. It'll be great to eventually see this dinosaur brought to life in the Hammond collection, probably with a lot better articulation. But in the time being, at least now, we finally have an appropriate deco for the main. And of course, it has removable venom right here. If we flip this up, we get that little code for the Jurassic Park Alive app. So with the playset in this kind of central hub mode that we see now, with the large tower kind of being in the middle, I think it would be fun to look at this tower while we have it like this. Using Claire, you can see that the ladder is fairly well sized. I mean, it's enough to where at least it's taller than her head, but it's such a short ladder that you don't really have much of a way to do too much right there. Instead, what you can do is have a dinosaur come up, and you can kind of have them finagle that right off. And this is just a separate plastic piece that just goes off to the side. And now you have these pipes right here. Now the cool part about these pipes is that not only does it have pretty decent sculpting, but this actually acts as an action feature button. If you ram any dinosaur, or person for that matter, into that button, this happens. You can see the tower kind of collapse backwards. It doesn't do anything too crazy because I think it wants to keep its structural integrity, and if it completely folded back, this thing would never be too stable. But that's just one thing you can do to make the tower kind of partially collapse, and it just clicks right back into place. Another cool thing you can do is if you have a larger dinosaur, and in this case we're going to use the T-Rex. This is from the Jeep and Tim set from Target. And you can use one of the larger dinosaurs to kind of angle the head up. And if you look, there's a little gray section right here on the tower. So the T-Rex could open its mouth up and hit that, and it causes that entire catwalk to just kind of drop off. And this is a really, really cool feature, and I really like this one, probably even better than the tower collapsing, but either way, It's a really cool way to kind of show a massive amount of destruction to that tower. And neither one of them seems to be triggered too easily without actually using those particular buttons. So it's not like that it creates a bunch of instability with the actual playset itself. Moving on up, it's important just to get a better look at the actual tower up here. And I really like this because of the translucent blue plastic. You can see on the inside that there are some decals that you saw me apply earlier on those computer monitors on one side, and of course, even on the other. So I like that there's a decent amount of room in here, and there's a little antenna to the side, almost looking like something from Cloud City in Star Wars. But if you look, it is slightly warped, and you could probably just apply a little bit of heat to that to get that straightened right out. So how do figures scale up in here? Well, pretty decently. I think that this is supposed to be the Outpost tower that all of the many main characters from the film run to near the end of the movie, particularly when the Giganotosaurus is trying to attack them. You've probably seen this in a lot of trailers, so I don't see it as too big of a spoiler to mention that. It really makes me anxious to get some of the other characters so that I can recreate some of those scenes. And I think that the scale works out tremendously well here. That's definitely large enough, I think, to convincingly put your 3 3/4 figures, and I think it looks super nice. Believe it or not, though, that's not all for that central hub. I'm actually a pretty big fan, by the way, of all the rock sculpting down here, and they even have footsteps sculpted into it, and even some green grass. There's even a foot peg right there, so there's all sorts of cool playability. But like I said, if you come back here, you can actually get a feel for what's on the other side. You can see that there's kind of a catwalk sort of walkway, but the railing is so small here that I wish it was as large as it is on the top. And on the other side, you can actually see there's a spot for a turret. And it actually looks really nice to get a turret there and makes it look even more complete. All right, but stick around because there are still more configurations that the instructions suggest. So one of the modes that's shown in the instruction manual is this. It's more of a basic enclosure. It's done in just kind of a triangle pattern, but with a few things that you actually have to remove. One of which is the giant tower. It's no longer a part of it. And also, you take out the little pin that was in here for the Pyroraptor. And with that, you're left with a very basic kind of looking fence structure. You would almost think that you could put the main tower structure in there in the middle. But as you can quickly see, it's not happening. It doesn't fit flush to the ground, and things just look funny. Perhaps if there was a little more room, you'd be able to get away with something like that, but it's just not happening. I suppose part of the intention could be to just put the tower over here to the side and just have this be its own standalone thing, and maybe put the Pyroraptor enclosure right here. And I suppose that's a pretty decent look, especially if you want to spread it out a little bit and maybe have this just be a dinosaur enclosure and the tower be its own separate thing, which in some ways might be a little more film accurate for what the end of the film shown us with Biosyn. Of course, this has Jurassic Park logos all over it, but that's kind of a running theme and could have been done to have avoided spoilers for the film. And so here we have a configuration for the playset that isn't exactly like anything that they show on the instructions, and instead it's just kind of something that I observed that I could do. In this way, you've got it arranged in just like a triangle pattern where everything's closed together, and you can see that it's still just enough room to, say, put in a larger dinosaur like the T-Rex, and it still looks like a pretty sizable playset this way. As you can see, though, once we open it up, I'm definitely having to do a few tricks to make the T-Rex fit in there, including taking the tail and like putting it through the back of the back fence. What would be really cool, I guess, is if you wanted to make this over $100 playset and bought two of them, and I guess you could link it up to make this really large, like a hexagonal kind of playset. But as it stands, I like being able to take these sections and really have them very securely fastened to each other in this triangle formation. Great way if you're trying to save space to make this a little more doable for display, and it looks really nice this way too. The one bad thing is that there's not really a way to integrate the final like connector piece if you do it like this. And here we have pretty much just a different layout that it shows in the instructions for that original mode. I definitely think this has some things going for it that the other didn't. I kind of like the placement of the tower as kind of an end thing, and then have the gate going this way. It's almost like you flipped the script a little bit on the last one, and if you wanted the entrance to your enclosure to come from over here, that makes sense, and it's just really up to you, but it's not different enough like the last mode to excite me quite as much as that one did. We'll utilize another pack of figures to kind of get a better idea of how this one works. This is part of the new series, and this is Kayla Watts, and yes, the Power Raptor. And you may be thinking, didn't the Power Raptor come with this? Yes, there are some differences, and we'll be highlighting that. In concept, Kayla is a pretty decent figure here. I think the biggest problem is just the inconsistency on the eye paint for my particular sample. It's probably something I can clean up or eventually find a better sample of. But other than that, she's pretty decent, and the outfit is a good reflection of what was in the film, aside from a little bit of some paint problems here on the front. And they even did a really good job with the hair because she has kind of the blonde highlights in the movie. So they did a much better job than, say, the Lego version did, where they opted just to give her blonde hair, which isn't accurate at all. I do like that she comes with a stun rod from the movie, which they utilize in the film. And I think that was a pretty good little detail to have in. So she's decent, but the likeness really holds it back, as well as the eye paint. She also comes with the Pyro Raptor. And you can see that this is, of course, the very distinctively colored Pyro Raptor from the film. The one thing is that here in this set, and I'm going to go ahead and show you one of the action features now, this Pyro Raptor can break out, and it's not really an action feature because you have to do it, of its enclosure. These are your two very differently colored Pyro Raptors, at least to my eye. They're quite different. And so I definitely think that there's quite a bit of difference going on here, particularly because there's much more prominent kind of dark spaces on the paint here. And I really like that it has the much more kind of orangey flail right here of feathers, and this one doesn't. So this is just kind of like a Power Raptor you get that has less paint, almost like to have a budget version that would come with the set. And this is the more film accurately painted one. I'm fairly sure that the codes on both of these Raptors are exactly the same, but I've not checked to be sure. So I think they're both pretty cool, and I'm glad I own them both because they're different enough. So speaking of the Pyro Raptor, let's look at its enclosure section. This is one of the more simple sections of the whole build. You can see that we just have this little kind of gate thing that you can put over a lot of different dinosaurs, not just the Pyroraptor. It's just a matter of fitting them in there. Most dinosaurs are going to be standing straight up, so if you get the regular, like deluxe sized dinosaurs like the Dilophosaurus, you can kind of finagle it in there to get it to be trapped. So it's definitely not just for the Pyroraptor. You have some options. You can also see that on the side we have one of these little codes here that you can use with the app. Apparently what they want you to do is to take your device, set it up here inside of this little ridge, or set it here and have it lean like that, and it's going to play some sounds. Now I tried it, and this code just took me to the Pyroraptor, which makes sense because if the Pyroraptor is in the little enclosure there, then yeah, you would scan it and the information on the screen would be all about Pyroraptor. But I was really hoping that that code would be something special that would unlock certain sounds and things that were specifically made for the Outpost Chaos playset. Unfortunately, I was pretty disappointed to find that wasn't the case. I thought for sure you'd be hearing things like the doors and things like the fences and more, like wildlife noises, because the instructions imply that you have kind of background noises that are created by that. I was even hoping for a little bit of music or something, but that's pretty unfortunate that they didn't go that route, but it would have been nice. Still, this is a pretty decent little section. Since there was honestly very little going on in that last section, we might as well cover the other right beside of it. These are kind of the two most boring sections of the thing. There is a couple of neat little action features here. You can see that this gate, if you hit it with a dinosaur, you can just open it up like that, so the dinosaurs can break out. Or up here, you can take this little observation area and it falls over, kind of. It's kind of a weak action feature. It's more like a reversible window or something. What is cool though is that this can come down too, and you can see that there's just a little sticker application to show that it's like something monitoring the dinosaurs. I really wish that there had been a little more put into this. I think it's more for a larger dinosaur to maybe grab onto, but the instructions show a smaller one just kind of crashing through it like this. Those dinosaurs, you know how much they want to get back into their enclosures, so that's kind of a funny little feature, but still worth pointing out. And here's yet another example of the near endless combinations that you can put this thing into, many that are not featured on the instructions. So it's just up to you to kind of experiment. And like I said, the great thing about this playset is that you're able to customize it and kind of tailor it to whatever space that you have. and make it work for your particular area or your particular display. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's almost like Mattel did quite a bit of market research about playsets and found that one of the biggest problems that I think a lot of collectors, and certainly probably parents as well, find is that lots of times they're not able to display them, or they don't want to buy them because of the room that they take up. Well, this is perfect for those particular concerns because you can pretty well make it into whatever you want it to be, while it still provides a really cool play area for all of your Jurassic Park toys and vehicles and accessories. And it's definitely something that I would suggest to both older collectors like myself and younger collectors as well, and to parents, because this is a really cool set. Mine was $55, which I do believe is supposed to be the retail price, and I got it from Big Bad Toy Store. I think since then they'd sold out. This brings back a lot of great memories for me because of how much I used to love my old Jurassic Park enclosure playset from 1993 from Kenner. And I still remember it so fondly. Not only did I use it for my Jurassic Park figures, but I also used it for my Marvel figures as well, like a hideout for them. And it just kind of lit my imagination on fire. And I definitely think that this playset will do the same for a lot of kids. It may not quite have the personality and a lot of the cool colors of that original, but this is definitely more colored to look like Biosyn or even the original Jurassic World. However, I could definitely see some enterprising customizer taking kind of the catwalk bars right here, the ladder, and getting rid of those yellow elements, which I think do detract a little visually from it, and maybe making those black or painting them or dyeing them or something, and giving a little bit more legitimacy to the playset. Honestly, the rest of it is incredibly legitimate when it comes to the color choices they used of that kind of cool blue and those grays. It definitely has that aesthetic of Biosyn from the end of the film, which I think is more what they're going for here. But like a lot of things, the toy line, it's funny that the Biosyn things are Jurassic theme park. You never know. There's really not a whole lot to dislike about this set, and there's not many ways that I can even criticize it. I think you get plenty for $55, including one human figure and one pretty serviceable dinosaur figure right here. That combined with the amount of plastic you get, especially for this beautiful tower piece right over here, I really do think that you're probably looking at $55 worth of stuff. This is honestly something that I would have expected a company to have charged more around $70 for. So I actually don't think this is a bad deal at all. Instead of going for electronics, they just opted for a smartphone experience, which is probably the smart thing to do, considering that that adds so much in terms of price tag to these playsets. If companies can be smart like Mattel was with this playset and find a way to do something that's reasonably priced but will also include a figure and maybe a monster, or in this case dinosaur, a villain, something like that, then I believe that playsets can be successful still. This is something that I hope we start seeing at large brick and mortar stores, because I do think kids are going to want to get their hands on this, particularly those who own the Giganotosaurus and the Therizinosaurus, however you say it. And I think that they will want to recreate the final battle from the end of the film. The only reason I do not have those yet is because I'm waiting on the Target exclusive set that will come with Ellie Sattler, so I definitely don't want to miss out on that. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the channel here, because we are doing new Jurassic videos all the time, and of course lots of Masters Universe and many other Mattel toy related videos, and just from all sorts of different properties. And of course, we would love for you to like the video if you feel that we deserve it. If this video helped you in any way, we certainly hope that it did. Maybe it helped you to make up your mind, and hopefully if you're watching this in the future and maybe this thing is on clearance, you can get a great deal like getting it for $30 or $40. That really makes it a no-brainer. But you may also be watching it at a time when this thing is rare. If you guys remember, there was a Baryonyx lava playset from the Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom movie that ended up being one of the most rare items from the entire toy line. Let's certainly hope that the same fate does not befall this set, because not only do I think it's infinitely more appealing than that set, but I also think that more kids would really want to add this as a way to kind of create their own little Jurassic Park. And I think it's just a lovely playset. And with that being said, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.